Give Vanessa the card, or get out of my house.
The mug missed my left eye by less than an inch. 1 second, I was sitting at my kitchen table, holding my bank card beneath my palm. The next, hot coffee struck my cheek, ran down my neck, and soaked the front of my blouse. The ceramic mug shattered against the cabinet behind me. My husband did not apologize. He looked at the red skin on my face and said, "Give Vanessa the card, or get out of my house." That was the moment I understood something terrifying. The man standing across from me was not losing control. He was showing me exactly how much control he believed he had. Hello. My name is Claire Bennett. I was 38 years old when one ordinary breakfast exposed the truth about my marriage. Until that morning, I believed I was a careful woman with a difficult husband. By lunchtime, I knew I was living with a stranger. By the end of the week, I would discover that he and his sister had been preparing to take far more than my bank card. It was a Tuesday in early October in Columbus, Ohio. My husband Derek had cooked eggs, which was unusual. His younger sister, Vanessa, sat at our table wearing sunglasses even though it was raining outside. Vanessa was 32, but every crisis in her life became someone else's responsibility. She had lost 3 jobs in 2 years. Each time, she claimed her manager was jealous. She had missed rent twice that summer, then posted photographs from a resort in Miami. That morning, she said she needed my debit card for own little emergency. "How much?" I asked. "Why does that matter?" Derek replied. I looked at Vanessa. "What is the emergency?" She sighed as if I were embarrassing her. "My account is temporarily locked. I have a payment due today. I'll return the card tonight. You can tell me the amount, and I can decide whether to help." Derek put down his fork. "She is not asking for charity. She needs access to money. My money." I said. The room went quiet. The account connected to that card contained nearly $46,000. Most of it came from my late mother. She had spent 31 years as a public school librarian. She lived carefully, saved slowly, and left me the money with one handwritten instruction: "Build something that belongs to you." I had planned to use it to open a small bookkeeping firm. Derek knew that. He also knew the account was in my name alone. Vanessa reached across the table. "Don't make this dramatic, Claire. Give it to me." I covered the card with my hand. "No." Derek stood so quickly that his chair scraped across the floor. He picked up his coffee mug. For half a second, I thought he was taking it to the sink. Then he threw it. Pain exploded across the right side of my face. I fell against the table, knocking my plate to the floor. Vanessa jumped back, but she did not come to help me. "Derek!" she shouted. He stared at me. His breathing was heavy, but his voice was cold. "Give Vanessa the card, or get out of my house." Our house. My salary had paid the mortgage for 6 years. My name was on the deed. Yet he said it with such confidence that I almost doubted reality. I picked up the card and slipped it into my pocket. Then I walked upstairs without speaking. Derek followed me halfway. "Where are you going?" I shut the bedroom door, took a photograph of my face, and sent it to my best friend, Marisol, with one sentence: "Please call me in 5 minutes." Then I packed my identification, medicine, laptop, 2 changes of clothing, and the small metal box containing my mother's papers. When Marisol called, I answered on speaker. "Claire," she said, "I am outside. Are you ready for our appointment?" She was not outside. She lived 20 minutes away, but Derek could hear her. "Yes," I said. "I'll meet you now." I carried my bag downstairs. Vanessa was wiping coffee from the cabinet. Derek stood beside the broken mug. "You are overreacting," he said. "It barely touched you." That sentence frightened me more than the throw. I walked out without answering. I locked myself in my car and drove straight to Riverside Methodist Hospital. The nurse found a first-degree burn along my cheek and neck, with a small blister near my collarbone. She asked how it happened. I almost said it was an accident. Instead, I looked at my reflection in the dark computer screen and heard my mother's voice: "Build something that belongs to you." My husband threw a mug of coffee at me, I said. The nurse stopped typing. Then she documented every mark. A hospital advocate named Nina sat with me while I made a police report. I did not feel brave. My hands shook so badly that she held the water cup for me. But I gave the officer the photograph, described Derek's words, and showed him Marisol's message. At 12:14 p.m., my phone began vibrating. "Derek, come home. We need to discuss your behavior." "Derek, Vanessa missed her payment because of you." "Derek, if you involve anyone else, you will regret it." Then a new alert appeared from my bank. Someone had tried to reset the password to my inheritance account. The request came from our home internet address. I stared at the notification until the letters blurred. The coffee had not been the beginning of Derek's anger. It had been the moment his plan stopped working. From the hospital parking lot, I called my bank's fraud department. I changed every password, froze the debit card, and added a verbal security phrase that Derek could not guess. Then I called my employer. I worked as the senior financial controller for a regional construction company. Numbers were my profession. I spent my days finding errors, tracing payments, and asking why a transaction existed. Yet at home, I had stopped asking those questions. My boss, Leonard, approved emergency leave without hesitation. He also reminded me that Derek had called our payroll office 2 weeks earlier, claiming we were refinancing our house. He had asked how to redirect my salary to a joint account. Payroll had refused because I had not signed the form. I felt cold despite the burn on my skin. That night, I stayed with Marisol. She was a family law paralegal and the least dramatic person I knew. When I showed her Derek's messages, she did not tell me to calm down or wait for an explanation. She said, "Save everything. From now on, we build a timeline." We began with the facts. 3 months earlier, Derek had become unusually interested in my inheritance. He sent me links to investment properties and asked me to add him to the account, for convenience. I refused. A week later, Vanessa announced that she was launching an event planning company called Vivid North Events. She had no clients, no office, and no visible source of funding. Still, she leased a luxury SUV and rented a downtown studio. Derek said an investor was helping her. I had believed him. The next morning, Marisol drove me to the courthouse. With the police report and medical record, an attorney helped me request a temporary protection order. Derek was ordered not to contact me or enter the house while the order was active. When an officer escorted me home to collect more belongings, I noticed that Derek's desk drawers were open. Papers covered the floor, as if someone had searched them in a hurry. My mother's metal box had been moved from the closet to the bed. Inside it, the original bank statements were gone. I did not touch Derek's computer. I did not search his private accounts. I photographed what was visible and gave the images to my attorney. Then I checked the household files that belonged to both of us. Our latest mortgage statement showed something impossible. The balance was $84,000 higher than it had been 6 months earlier. I called the lender from my attorney's office. After verifying my identity, the representative explained that a home equity line of credit had been opened in both our names. "I never signed that application," I said. There was a long pause. The representative transferred me to the fraud department. The application contained an electronic signature using my name. It listed an email address that looked similar to mine. Except one letter had been changed. The proceeds, $80,000, had been transferred to an account owned by Vivid North Events, Vanessa's company. Suddenly her studio and SUV made sense. Derek had not asked for my bank card because Vanessa needed help with a payment. They needed access to my inheritance because they had already borrowed against our home, using my identity. The card was probably meant to cover the first loan payment, or prove that they controlled my funds. My attorney, Rachel Kim, told me not to contact them. "We will let the bank investigate," she said. "You should also review your credit reports." We found 2 more surprises. One was a business credit card opened in my name with a balance of $17,640. The other was a personal loan application submitted 4 days earlier for $35,000. That loan had been denied because the applicant failed an identity verification question. I remembered dinner the previous Friday. Derek had casually asked the name of my first elementary school. I answered incorrectly because I was distracted. That mistake may have saved me $35,000. By Friday afternoon, I had filed identity theft reports, frozen my credit, notified the lenders, and given the police copies of the documents. I also opened a new checking account at a different bank and redirected my salary. Derek responded through his attorney. He claimed the coffee spill was accidental. He said I had agreed verbally to the home equity loan and was now pretending otherwise because I disliked Vanessa. Then Vanessa posted online. She wrote that a jealous family member was trying to destroy a woman-owned business. She uploaded a photograph of herself standing in the studio beside a banner reading Gerand Openge. Behind her, on a glass table, was a familiar blue folder. It belonged to my mother. I enlarged the photograph. Part of a document showed beneath the folder's cover. I could read my full legal name, my bank's logo, and the final 4 digits of my inheritance account. Vanessa had accidentally posted proof that she possessed my missing financial records. I took screenshots before the post disappeared. 2 hours later, an unknown number called me. The woman on the line introduced herself as Tasha Green. She had worked for Vanessa for 11 days. "I saw your name on some forms," she whispered. "Vanessa told me you were her silent partner." but yesterday she asked me to copy your signature from an old document. I refused. This morning she fired me. My heart began pounding. Do you still have anything? I asked. An email, she said. And a voicemail. She forgot I could still access the company inbox. The voicemail was from Derek. His voice was clear. Once Claire's account is connected, move the money in smaller amounts. She checks anything over 10,000. For 7 years my husband had watched me work. He knew how I found fraud. He simply never imagined I would investigate him. Tasha met Rachel and me at a coffee shop near the courthouse. She brought printed emails, her termination message, and the original voicemail file. Rachel instructed her not to access the company account again. We preserved what she had already received and turned copies over to the detective. The emails revealed that Derek and Vanessa had promised investors a major holiday event contract with my employer. No such contract existed. They had used my job title to make the claim believable. One message from Derek read, "Claire controls the budget. Her approval is guaranteed." Another said, "Once the family funds arrive, we can repay the bridge money before anyone notices." There was the new horror I had not expected. They had not only stolen against my home, they had convinced 3 local people to invest a total of 120,000 based on my name and a fictional contract. If the scheme collapsed, I could look involved. Rachel contacted my employer's legal department. I expected suspicion. Instead, Leonard brought in our outside counsel and asked me to explain everything. I showed them the false emails, the credit reports, the medical record, and the identity theft report. The company issued a formal letter stating that Vivid North Events had no contract, no approved vendor status, and no authority to use my name or title. That letter changed the investigation. The detective referred the financial evidence to the county prosecutor's economic crimes unit. The lenders began their own reviews. Vanessa's vehicle lease company flagged irregular income documents. The studio landlord learned that the deposit had come from disputed loan proceeds. Still, Derek acted confident. At the protection order hearing, he wore the navy suit I had bought him for our anniversary. He told the judge I was emotional because of my mother's death, even though she had died nearly 2 years earlier. He said I had invented the attack to gain an advantage in divorce. Then Rachel played the recording from my phone. I had forgotten that my voice assistant application automatically saved short audio clips after hearing its activation word. During the argument, Vanessa had said, "Seriously, Claire, close enough to trigger the device." The clip lasted only 19 seconds. First came the sound of the mug breaking, then my gasp, then Derek's voice, "Give Vanessa the card, or get out of my house." The courtroom became silent. The judge extended the protection order. Outside, Derek's attorney asked Rachel about settlement. Derek would agree to sell the house if I withdrew the fraud complaints and accepted responsibility for half the business debt. Rachel almost laughed. I did not. I looked at Derek across the hallway. He gave me the same expression he had worn in our kitchen, as if my refusal were a temporary inconvenience. That night, Vanessa announced that her grand opening celebration would continue. She told investors that the family misunderstanding had been resolved and that her company was stronger than ever. The event was scheduled for Saturday at the studio. She expected more than 100 guests. I had no intention of attending. Revenge did not mean walking into a party and creating a scene. Real justice was quieter. It was a signed affidavit, a preserved email, and the right document delivered to the right person. On Friday, however, Vanessa sent me an invitation. The subject line said "Quom esse marhescio du a havas ard." The message contained one sentence: "If you apologize publicly, Derek may still let you come home." Attached was a promotional brochure. On the final page, Vivid North Events listed me as Chief Financial Officer. That was a fresh crime committed after Vanessa knew I objected. I forwarded it to the detective, the investors, my employer's attorney, and the lenders. My employer immediately sent a cease and desist notice. The investors demanded records. One of them, a retired dentist named Mr. Alvarez, discovered that his signature had been copied onto a revised agreement. By Saturday morning, their celebration was already collapsing. The studio landlord changed the locks after receiving notice that the lease deposit was connected to disputed funds. The vehicle company repossessed Vanessa's SUV from the parking lot. 2 vendors canceled because their deposits had never cleared. Vanessa moved the event to a rented hotel ballroom and told everyone the studio had a plumbing emergency. At 5:30 p.m., as guests began arriving, the hotel manager received 3 chargeback alerts connected to the event. He demanded another form of payment. Vanessa called Derek. Then Derek violated the protection order and called me. I did not answer. His voicemail said, "You have 10 minutes to fix this. Transfer $20,000 or I will make sure you lose the house." I forwarded the voicemail to the police. At 6:17 p.m., officers arrived at the hotel. They were not there because I wanted a dramatic arrest. They were there because Derek had violated a court order, threatened me, and continued an alleged financial scheme. Guests filmed as he was led from the lobby. Vanessa screamed that I had ruined her life. But the most important person in the room was not filming. It was a woman named Brooke Ellis, a contract bookkeeper Vanessa had hired 2 months earlier. Seeing the police frightened her. She asked to speak privately with the detective. Brooke had the company's real ledger. It showed that the missing $80,000 had not all gone into the business. Derek had transferred $28,000 into a separate account Vanessa did not know about. From there, he had made payments to an apartment complex in Cincinnati. The apartment was leased to a woman named Elise Morgan. When the detective showed me the name, I recognized it immediately. Elise was Derek's former girlfriend. The financial fraud was not his only secret. He had been building another life with money stolen from mine. The truth arrived in pieces over the next 4 months. Derek had contacted Elise almost a year earlier. He told her our marriage was ending and promised to move to Cincinnati after he received money from a real estate investment. The investment was my house. He planned to drain my inheritance, leave me responsible for the loans, and use Vanessa's company to hide the transfers. Vanessa knew about the forged home equity documents and the business card. She did not know about Elise or the secret apartment. When Vanessa learned that Derek had hidden $28,000 from her, their loyalty disappeared overnight. She hired her own attorney and offered to cooperate. It did not rescue her. It only changed the order in which the truth came out. The prosecutor charged Derek with identity fraud, forgery, theft, and violating the protection order. Vanessa faced fraud and forgery charges tied to the business documents. Their attorneys negotiated the final outcomes, but neither could call it a family misunderstanding anymore. The recording, the medical report, Tasha's voicemail, Brooke's ledger, and the false loan documents all told the same story. They believed my money was available because I was available. They believed my name was useful because my voice did not matter. They were wrong. The bank's investigation confirmed that I had not authorized the home equity line. The forged debt was removed from my responsibility. The business credit card and loan applications were also separated from my credit history. The process was slow. There were forms, interviews, delays, and nights when I woke at 3 a.m. convinced that another account existed somewhere. Justice did not feel like a movie. It felt like a second job I had never applied for. But little by little, I got my life back. During the divorce, Derek demanded half of my inheritance. The court records showed it had remained separate property, and that he had attempted to take it through fraud. His demand failed. He also argued that I should sell the house and give him half the equity. My attorney presented the payments I had made, the fraudulent loan, and the money he had diverted to the Cincinnati apartment. The final settlement credited those losses against his share. I kept the house. That surprised everyone, including me. For months, I had imagined selling it because the kitchen reminded me of the mug flying toward my face. But on the first morning after the divorce became final, I stood in that room alone. Sunlight fell across the table. The wall had been repaired, but I could still identify the exact place where the ceramic had struck. I decided the memory did not belong to Derek. The house was not where I had become powerless. It was where I had finally recognized my power. I removed the dark cabinets and painted the kitchen warm white. I replaced the heavy table with the oak table my mother had used in her apartment. Above it, I framed her handwritten note, "Build something that belongs to you." Then I used part of my inheritance for its intended purpose. I opened Bennett Bookkeeping and Fraud Review in a small office near downtown. At first, it was only me and one part-time assistant. Within a year, we were helping local businesses organize their accounts and recognize suspicious activity. Before it became a disaster, Tasha became my first full-time employee. She was careful, honest, and much better at client relations than I was. Brooke later referred several customers to us after completing her cooperation with investigators. I also began volunteering twice a month with the hospital advocacy program. I did not give legal advice. I sat with people while they made calls, changed passwords, or tried to say out loud what had happened to them. Sometimes they asked how I knew when it was time to leave. I told them the truth. There was no single perfect moment. The mug was dramatic. But the danger had been growing for years in every password Derek wanted, every boundary he mocked, and every time he made me feel selfish for protecting what was mine. The coffee did not create the truth. It made the truth impossible to ignore. 8 months after the divorce, I received a letter from Derek. It came through the approved legal channel. He wrote that Vanessa had manipulated him. He said Elise had abandoned him. He said he had lost his career, his family, and his future because I refused to forgive one mistake. At the bottom, he asked me to write a statement supporting a lighter sentence. I read the letter once. Then I placed it beside the hospital photographs, the false loan application, and the voicemail threatening my home. I did write a statement. I described the burn. I described the forged signature. I described the sleepless nights, the damaged credit, the stolen papers, and the plan to leave me with debt while he started another life. I ended with one sentence. Accountability is not revenge, and refusing to protect the person who harmed me is not cruelty. Derek received a sentence that included incarceration, supervised release, and restitution. Vanessa received probation, community service, and a restitution order after cooperating and pleading guilty. Vivid North events closed before it held a single legitimate event. I never recovered every dollar. Some costs cannot be returned. But I recovered my name, my home, my work, and the quiet inside my own mind. One rainy Tuesday, almost exactly 2 years after the breakfast that ended my marriage, I sat at my mother's oak table with a fresh cup of coffee. For a moment, the smell carried me back to the heat on my face and the sound of breaking ceramic. Then the memory passed. I picked up my bank card and placed it in my wallet. My hand did not shake. Derek once told me to surrender what was mine or leave his house. In the end, I did neither. I kept what was mine, and I made sure he was the one who had to leave.